It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Joe DiBiase of the Locked On Sabres podcast. ButcherBox has all you need for a tasty, stress-free holiday season. This Black Friday, your search for amazing deals on high-quality protein ends with ButcherBox. They're offering their best deal of the year. Choose your free steak for a year. Choose between 2 New York strip steaks, filet mignons, or ribeyes to get free in every box for a whole year when you join. Sign up today at butcherbox.com/NHL and use the code NHL to choose your free steak for a year and get $20 off. That's butcherbox.com/NHL. Use the code NHL to get this special Black Friday deal plus $20 off.
Happy Friday, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving to all of our friends south of the border. The Friday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast has a number of different pressing fantasy topics to break down. Andrei Vasilevskiy on the return, Patty Kane nearing a deal, and who would you rather, a classic segment back for two of the biggest snipers in the game. Big-time bets. Let's tap in and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hockey heads, fantasy fanatics, and degenerate gamblers, welcome back inside the lab to your source for fantasy hockey news and daily degenerate gambling breakdowns, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Rodin. And on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My goodness me, my friend Steele, couldn't be doing this without you. I feel for some reason this has been a really weird week, Steele. The scheduling has been all off. We got American Thanksgiving yesterday. Lots of games, 15 on tap. So you know the betting board tonight and our bets is going to be a little spicy. But before we get there, and we're going to have to try and keep these segments short because we got a lot to talk about, including going back to one of our favorite initial segments that we do. Who would you rather? This happens all the time in the fantasy world. You're looking at a player over another top two. Maybe you're considering trades. That's why we're breaking down Pastrnak or Kucherov. Who would you rather own? Patty Kane's very close to a deal. And perhaps Steele, most importantly for right now in terms of fantasy impact, Andrei Vasilevskiy coming back to a Tampa Bay squad that's been running it out with Jonas Johansson. I know you've had a take on him. Hit me with your take on this entire situation, because I think the fact that this man in Jonas Johansson is leading the league at 17 games played, they've been running him out there far too much, and it's been affecting their success in the standings. They need Vazzy back in a big way.
Yeah, they do need Vazzy back, and there's a really good chance of his return on this 3-game road trip, whether it's against the Carolina Hurricanes, Colorado Avalanche, or the Arizona Coyotes. Just like John Cooper said, he would be very disappointed if he doesn't return sooner than the end of November, and it looks like he will be back very, very soon. So it's going to be awesome to get Vasilevskiy back in the blue paint for the Tampa Bay Lightning and all of their fans. But like you said, they've overworked Jonas Johansson so far this year. I think he's done a fine job so far. I think the goals against average and save percentage is what we expected, but he's 8-4-5 on the season. He's played the most games out of all goalies so far, like you said, 17. But moving forward for when Andrei Vasilevskiy does return, I think the Lightning need to tread very cautiously on how they move forward with Vasilevskiy and his workload. I think, my take on this situation would be a 50-50 split for the remainder of the season, because again, you don't want to, Johansson's been overworked himself, but you don't want to overwork Andrei Vasilevskiy, give him a heavy workload, with the 62 games that are remaining this season after coming off back surgery. So you want to be careful with how much time he's going to be playing starting those games. I wouldn't let him play more than 35 games unless they desperately need him in the later stages of the regular season. If they're fighting for, home ice advantage or fighting for a playoff spot, again, they just need to be super cautious moving forward. But for fantasy hockey fans out there, and for GMs who drafted Vasilevskiy, you've got to be super ecstatic about his near return at this point. His ADP this season was 84.7, which is the 8th round. So if you're getting Vasilevskiy, again, he was on the IR for the first 2 months, but you're getting him back at the end of November. I think back to last year and exactly what happened with Charlie McAvoy and Brad Marchand. They started the season on the IR. They fell down the draft board, and it was an absolute steal when they made their early return and teared up the league. So this is what I expect from Vasilevskiy, but moving forward, again, with a surgery and injury as severe as the back, which, again, is probably the most important maybe for goaltenders who have to stand the entirety of the game in the blue paint. They're going to have to be cautious with his workload.
Most definitely. And also just with the fact that this team has been so successful on the backs of, no pun intended, on the backs of their goaltending. Andrei Vasilevskiy has also played a lot of hockey, postseason or regular season, over the last number of years. And it's a good thing. It's because they've been going on deep runs. But there are a lot of 7-game series on that body. And I think you've made an excellent point that GMs are also going to need to remember that when Vazzy does come back, it might have to be a situation that you monitor very closely. He could struggle. They might really go to a true 50-50 split to return, really rotating him in and out. So really keep your eyes peeled on this situation. It's good news for sure for the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that still allow the 7th most shots on net per game this year. What I wanted to say about this entire situation is, and when I think I dig into the numbers, that's a defensive metric. But when I look at what I think the strength of this team should be, obviously Vasilevskiy, when he's healthy, the defense. But where has the offensive power been when they've been losing games? I know they're right up there at the top of the league. 70 goals, I believe, actually. Let me just bring that up.
Yeah, 70 goals. They're tied for second right now.
Right there in second, but they over the last week and a half, it's gone zapped. They were shut out in back-to-back games. They're losing close 1-goal games. And I think what I want to do is just say that the bottom 6 group right now is leaving so much to be desired in Tampa Bay. And here's my take on it, Steele. And, we can move on from Vasilevskiy in a sec here and talk Patty Kane. Is when I look at that lineup and I bring up the lines here, you have Brandon Hagel having a great year playing on that top line. You have Nick Paul having a great year playing on the second line. These are guys that usually prop up the top 6. These are guys that usually eat up all those bottom 6 minutes. And sure, over the last couple of years, Hagel has proven that he can score goals. But this is what happens now when those holes that up top had to be filled by your depth guys. That bottom 6 is really leaving a lot to be desired still. And I think that's why you're seeing this team struggle a little bit. Obviously, Vazzy being out hurts, but there is a lot of hockey left to be played. And I think that back injury, though, is something that you highlighted very nicely, has to be dealt with very carefully, much like the injury for Patrick Kane. Whoa, that was a good segue. By the way, that graphic that we just had up about Vasilevskiy, here it is one more time. Those are his numbers from last year, clearly not playing this season. 34, 22, and 4 last season, though, with a good record and strong numbers. He is one of the best goalies in the league, Steele. But very quickly, one of the best offensive and efficient forwards over the last 2 decades has been Patrick Kane. And now he's nearing a deal with a number of teams, Steele. And I want your take on this because I have a very clear one of where I think he should go. And it's a very similar situation to a couple of years ago with another very gifted, offensively minded forward that's at the end of his career in Claude Giroux. So hit me with your take on what you think about Patty Kane. And can he still bring it, Steele? That's the main question here.
Yeah, it seems like no matter where he goes, it's a team that's going to be in the Atlantic Division. That's, the Florida Panthers, the Detroit Red Wings, Buffalo Sabres, Ottawa Senators, Toronto Maple Leafs. It seems like those have been the teams that have been very keen on Patrick Kane and have most likely the destination of where he goes to. But personally, I think the Detroit Red Wings and Buffalo Sabres make the most sense. I think both sides could use help on the right side, and especially for the Detroit Red Wings, I think he'd be paired nicely on that second line with JT Compher and Alex DeBrincat, a former Chicago Blackhawk who we had a lot of chemistry with in Chicago. And then going, even if you were to go to Buffalo and help them on the right side there. I know JJ Peterka has been playing pretty solid as well as some of those other young guys, but why would you not want Patrick Kane, a guy who's from that area playing for the team? And it would be an absolute special treat to watch as well as they try to fight for a playoff spot or, battle in that very tough Atlantic Division. Who knows? Now that John Klingberg has been moved to the LTIR recently, maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs try to swing something and move some money around to get Patrick Kane under contract for a year or two. So very interesting that all these teams that are popping up come from the Atlantic Division, but I expect him to be Personally, I expect him to be with either Detroit or Buffalo when the time comes.
If I were to have to pick, and the quote is up here on the screen from TSN's Chris Johnston, the main 4 teams that are left in the mix here: Buffalo, Rangers, Buffalo Red Wings that you mentioned, Panthers, and of course the New York Rangers that he was with last year. That makes sense to me as well, Steele. But if I have to hit you with the take that I alluded to, this guy isn't going anywhere that doesn't have a really, really good shot to win the cup. And if it's the Rangers, if we're breaking down that line, those teams there, it's going to be the Rangers and the Panthers above the Sabres and the other squad. But that's, again, a side conversation. All I wanted to say is he could slot in nicely like what Claude Giroux did the other couple seasons ago in Florida. Doesn't necessarily have to be that guy. If Matthew Tkachuk's the leader in there, Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Reinhart, and others, he can slide right in there as that veteran. We know they're good enough to go on a cup run. They just got 2 big pieces back on the blue line. If I'm Patty Kane and I'm seeing other similarities here with what Claude Giroux was able to do with this Panthers lineup, I'm going to have a look at Florida. And hey, why not stay warm, baby? Because this winter month is going to be a little couple of cold ones, but it's not going to be cold on today's episode, Steele. And if you're good with it, I'm going to take us right here to break because the conversation is going to heat up in a minute, my friends. Who would you rather, Nikita Kucherov or David Pastrnak, right after the break? And of course, big time bets. Today's episode, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This time of year, you can be struggling. It's natural to feel some sadness or anxiety. Adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all of the stress and change, something to look forward to, something to make you feel grounded, give you tools to manage everything that's going on. If you've benefited from therapy, you got to be checking out BetterHelp. This is what you need every single day in your life. And if you haven't tried yet, you got to be checking out today. Give it a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNHL today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNHL.
Hey everyone, Chris from Locked On Avalanche here. If you like using debit over credit, I just learned about something that's definitely a game changer. Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases, which means you can get cash back on NHL tickets or head-to-toe hockey gear to make this season a total win. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We got to mention this because it is amazing. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, the first ever national sports 24 streaming channel. And thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. We appreciate all that love and support. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, a 5-star review. Again, we appreciate all the love and support, and keep leaving those comments on the YouTube channel. We really do love the feedback we get from all of our listeners out there. So thank you so much for all of that. Let's move forward, though. We got big time bets at the end of this episode. Big betting board for Friday night, or Friday throughout the entire day, actually.
Yep.
But let's talk about who would you rather?
Sure.
David Pastrnak or Nikita Kucherov? I believe you're going with David Pastrnak in this instance. I'm going with Nikita Kucherov, but I'll throw it over to you so you can have the first kickoff of this conversation.
I missed this segment, number one. You and I are going to start getting a little bit more structured with our week-to-week schedules on this show, breaking down some more regular segments to really help the fantasy heads out there. But very quickly, speaking of which, just to wrap up that Patty Kane point, wherever he goes, any of those teams steal. You know, he's slotting right in there on the top power play and likely right there on the top line with whoever it is that's going to put up points. So he obviously becomes relevant. Anyhow, both of these players steal eerily similar numbers over the last couple of seasons when I looked at these numbers back and forth. So as much as you and I like to have these conversations, I think right here, right now, aside from maybe the fact that David Pastrnak is a few years younger this is a pretty even draw, because if you have either of these guys on your team over the last couple of seasons, and I'm going to bring this up here, you have probably been in the mix for the top spot in your league.
Yeah.
Over 148 games over the last 3 seasons, 211 points for Nikita Kucherov. Over 170 games over the last 3.5 seasons, 219 points for David Pastrnak. But where I'll say this, Steele, obviously caveat of the age, I'm going to be leaning that way. Keeper Dynasty, you know me, baby. But year-to-year leagues, my goodness, both of these guys are offensive dynamos, but both play a bit of a different game. Kucherov, obviously, more of a distributor, more of a playmaker, and my goodness, David Pastrnak in his office there, more of a pure shooter. That's why you have higher shot numbers for him, higher penalty minutes a little bit, and the peripherals are a little bit better with David Pastrnak. But I'm nitpicking because honestly, Steele, Nikita Kucherov has the rings to do the talking in terms of who's really had more success, if we want to go tit for tat here.
You stole my line. The first thing I have written here is how crazy, eerily similar their stats have been over the last few seasons. Both currently sitting at 29 points this year. Both finished with 113 points last year. Yeah. But for me, what makes me choose Kucherov is I think he has a little bit more versatility in his game. I think both players can, weave their way through players, make them look silly out there with their skating, their edge work, and their hands. They have elite slap shots. Obviously, David Pastrnak a little bit better, but Kucherov's is not one to be doubted or questioned as well. They both got incredible playmaking ability, but Kucherov's is a little bit better than Pastrnak's. But what really separates them for me is, again, the versatility that you get from Kucherov with his playmaking ability, but more specifically when it comes to the power play. He's an absolute juggernaut. I know David Pastrnak gets a lot of power play goals and a lot of power play points on both sides, but his ability to make the quick decision and make the one-touch pass with the puck is what separates him. Either it's down to Anthony Cirelli at the post, or it's, cross stream on a string to Steven Stamkos, bump it to Braden Point in the slot, or he just takes the one-timer himself. So the goalies, it's almost like trying to figure out where Alexander Ovechkin's going to shoot the puck, because he's going to shoot it, but where's he putting it? But with Nikita Kucherov, he has so many different options. No one can really come to a conclusion of what he's actually going to do once he gets it on the power play. And for me, that's what separates them. But again, these are players that you're drafting in the first round. If they're not in the first round, you're making a mistake out there. And whether you pick Pastrnak or Kucherov, you're going to be pretty successful to start the season.
Yeah, and another point, just to nitpick, just to play devil's advocate on your power play point, in 54 less games, Pastrnak has almost 30 more power play goals. But I'm just nitpicking, and because I'll go back the other way too. When you're looking at hardware, Pasternak's second in Hart Trophy voting. Kucherov has a Hart Trophy in his mantle. Yeah. Kucherov has a couple of rings in the mantle. I believe, if I'm bringing this up, I'm pretty sure he's got a Conn Smythe in there as well. He does not, but that's okay. We'll give him one just for fun. What I'm looking at here, Steele, at the end of the day is, if we're bringing it back to the fantasy angle, I think the very clear choice here, if it is a keeper or a dynasty league, just barely, I'm going to lean Pastrnak for the age. But right now, you can for sure have this conversation all day long on who would you rather. And I think, actually, you know what? We should put up a poll on Twitter to see where this one lies, because I have a feeling it's going to be right there at 50-50. And I think what will matter, and maybe determining this conversation at least this year, these two teams might have to go through each other at some point in the very near future. And let's see who can maybe elevate their game, because it's clear at this point, when it comes down to getting it done in the clutch, you're going to have to give it a little bit over to the Russian rifle on Nikita Kucherov's side. But hey, I think you and I are going to have to do these who would you rathers a whole lot more. It just leads so nicely into big time bets, doesn't it?
Might have to go round 2 with JT Miller and Jack.
Oh, we're going round 2.
Get everyone's take on that one again.
Yes, sir.
That was a very fun conversation. So we're definitely going to go round 2. But we'll get some other matchups between some top tier players in the NHL fantasy wise. We're going to get to big time bets very, very soon for that 15 game board for Friday night and Friday. But this episode is also brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. That's why Flip and I both use Game Time, and we urge you to use Game Time as well. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals on all prices, views from your seats, and the best price guaranteed. You know, my girlfriend and I, we love going to NHL games, but we're pretty last minute when it comes to those plans. And the Game Time is there even 20 minutes before puck drop. And they make sure you get your tickets super fast. Last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. The views from your seat at the venue, the lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. So Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on those tickets. And Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last minute seats. And the Game Time guarantee means you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast to draw your attention to the taste that's going down in the bread aisle. All thanks to Dave's Killer Bread, bread amplified. Anyone can bake bread, few can rock it, and Dave's Killer Bread is the champion of killer taste, killer texture, and is for those who want to rise above the boring. Organic and healthy doesn't have to mean boring when it's made with the highest quality organic and non-GMO ingredients, packed with whole grains, fiber, and protein. 21 whole grains and seeds bread has a subtle sweetness and a seed-coated crust, while good seed products are the boldest and sweetest of all. Dave's Killer Bread was built on the belief that second chances can change lives, because after spending 15 years in prison, not only did the guy with the guitar you see on every loaf turn his own life around, he's helping others to do the same. By hiring the best people for the job, regardless of their background, he's ensuring your mornings no longer taste like cardboard, your taste buds don't have to feel sedated, and your sandwiches can become superstars. Visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more and look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your favorite grocery store.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe, leave a follow, and a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support. Continue leaving the comments on the YouTube channel, getting some great ideas from all of you out there that are leaving those comments and all of those feedbacks. So thank you so much. We're going to try to return the favor when it comes to big-time bets.
Yes, sir.
For Friday's big game board. Lots of games to choose from, Flip. I believe we have one or two from the same game.
For sure.
But again, there was a lot of juicy matchups here. I wanted to pick like 6 or 7 to talk about, but I kind of shrunk it down to my top 3.
I like that, but also the problem here with me, Steele, we've talked about when it's like a 3 to 6 game board, you can really kind of focus in and do your research, pick your spots. When I see 15 games on the board, I get very, very overwhelmed. And the fact that there's also, let me count this up here. Give me an abacus. 8 afternoon games starting before 3:30 or earlier Eastern time. There's caveats here. These guys have maybe been at home with the family. Home teams pay attention to sluggish starts. They've been at home eating turkey and stuffing with the fam. These are degenerate gambling angles that you have to remember, Steele. Too much cranberry sauce makes the skates move a little bit slow. So that's all I would say ahead of this board. And I'm really glad to hear that you're kind of paring your picks down. That's not a food joke, but here we go. If you're okay with it, I'll holler at you with 2 because they come from the same game. And sue me if I'm going to the Toronto Maple Leafs and I'm going to Austin Matthews. But I think you're going to back me up on this one because dig into his numbers against the Chicago Blackhawks in his career. I implore you to do that. And this is why I'm going to Austin Matthews over 1.5 anytime points. I think he goes off. I'm going to say 1 goal, 1 assist. I could see a couple of assists and a goal. Bottom line is, in how many games here, Steele? 13 career games, regular season against the Blackhawks, 8 goals, 12 assists for 20 points. I'm loving that angle. Austin Matthews has been a little quiet, so I'm going with that, and I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. And when you dig into those numbers, Steele, and I think it's 7 of the last 10 between these two have gone over the number, 6 of Toronto's last 7. High-scoring over the number. Hit me with the total 6.5 over at -120. That's my second pick.
Love both those picks. Probably should go William Nylander over 1.5 points as
Probably.
his matchups. He's been an absolute stud on that 17-game point streak. But my first and lock of the night does come from that Leafs game. It's going to be Matthews' anytime goal. Like you said, 8 goals in 13 games. He plays very well against Chicago. And it's going to be nice to see another matchup between Connor Bedard and Austin Matthews. So that would be very fun to watch. I'll just rattle off my next 2 picks. They both are an over-under. Second pick of the night, Oilers, Capitals, over 6.5 in this matchup. The goaltending from the Oilers continues.
Hold on a sec, Steele. How about those Washington Capitals? My goodness, this is really bothering me. I don't know what's happening here.
Dude, I was gonna bring it up, but totally spaced out.
It's okay.
I don't know what's going on with it, but I'm not buying into it. I'm not buying into this whatsoever. I don't know how they're top 2 in the Metropolitan. I don't know how they're on a 5-game winning streak. They don't look great, but they're getting the wins.
Charlie Lindgren with some pact with the devil is on a heater. Anyway, sorry to derail you there. I was hoping we didn't have to get down this railing of sadness. Anyway, go ahead.
Oilers, Capitals, over 6.5 in this matchup. The goaltending on the Oilers continues to be garbage. Again, not really buying into the Washington Capitals, but I don't know who's going to win, but I believe there's going to be a ton of goals scored in this matchup from both sides. Final pick of the night, Predators and Blues, over 6.5 in this matchup. I don't know if this is correct, but I believe 8 out of the last 10 games have been over the number. That's correct. Why I'm going with over 6.5. It's at great odd right now at plus 112, I believe. But yeah, those are my 3 picks. Lock of the night, Matthews, anytime goal.
Absolutely love it, Steele. And I've been loving using these graphics. Holler at us on YouTube to make sure you're tapped into all these fire graphics. Total has gone over the number in 5 of the last 6 of Nashville's games on the road in St. Louis. And total has gone over the number 8 of the last 10 between these two. Like you said, my lock of the night is Nashville at St. Louis over 6.5. Steele. That odd is fluctuating. I see it. I think what did you see it? I said minus 115. You've seen it out there at what?
Plus 112 on FanDuel.
Wow, giddy up. So let's get it because I think this has got all the makings of a barn burner. Loving these picks, Steele. We've been keeping that loot train running, my friend. This week has been a good one. Let's slide into it. Also, big time Saturday special episode coming up. Even more picks and breakdowns for all of Saturday's action. So make sure you're tapped into that episode tomorrow as well.
Tapped in for the Saturday weekend special. 2 in a row. I actually like doing a few of these weekend specials. We might have to do this every once in a while in the month. Thank you again so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. And again, Locked On has launched the first ever National Sports 24 streaming channel on YouTube. So make sure you go check out the Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever National Sports 24/7 streaming channel brought to you by Locked On Podcast Network and the local experts of Locked On. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all those bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.
Buying tickets to see your favorite NHL team shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Make this holiday season one you'll remember forever with an engagement ring from JamesAllen.com. James Allen knows each love story is unique. That's why they make it easy to custom design engagement rings at up to half the price of a traditional jeweler. Choose from tons of conflict-free diamonds, both earth-created and lab-created. Then pick your ring setting and metal. Make your holiday engagement truly magical with 25% off at JamesAllen.com, promo code LOCKEDON. That's JamesAllen.com, promo code LOCKEDON.
The Monday edition of Locked On NHL is a must-listen. Every Monday on Locked On NHL, host Gil Martin takes you to the 3 biggest NHL stories from the weekend's games with the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. No national fluff. You get the real story from the Locked On experts who are with the team every day. Put it on your calendar every Monday on Locked On NHL. Locked On Podcast Network, Your team every day.